Hi, my name is Dave Picart and I'm from Manchester. Now, for those of you who don't really know me, that's not of great importance because this situation is not about me. It's about God. Many of us know how amazing God is. On one occasion, on the 22nd of June this year, 2013, I went off to the gym as usual. And I was in the gym on a Friday morning, happily going about my business, doing my exercise routine. I felt this strong headache at the back of my head, just at the back there. I felt this really strong pain. I don't usually get headaches, and I thought, well, you know something, just ignore it. After a few minutes, the headache just began to increase, and I'm talking about it really began to get to the point where I couldn't really move. So it's really painful. So, and then after about 5 minutes of pain moved from the back of my head to the front, just at the top here. And it became so severe, I can only describe it as if a bomb or grenade exploded in my head. And I've never felt pain like that. On the scale of 1 to 10, I'd say it's about a 12 or 15. And then I got into A&E and was usually waiting there for several hours, sitting around talking. And when we finally got seen, I spoke to it was a nurse. I think that's sort of like a nurse, which is like a half nurse, half doctor type of thing. I'm not too sure exactly what they call them. And it's fortunate that I saw her, because if I'd seen just an ordinary nurse, I don't think she'd have really come up with the conclusions. But when I described my symptoms to her, she then said, okay, you know something? I'm going to book you in to do a CT scan. So after about an hour, this was done. And when that was done, she then came back and said, really, I suspect you've had a subarachnoid, hemorrhage. In other words, to you and I essentially suffer from a brain hemorrhage, which is a bleed on the brain. Anyway, we were sitting around talking, I was eating, I was getting around, we were just joking because I felt fine apart from the headache, which had lessened to a more bearable level by that time. And we're just joking around and having fun. And then at about 2 o'clock in the morning, the hospital received a call from the other hospital to say, we have a bed ready. When I got onto the ward, I'm joking with the ambulance guys and we're talking and everything else. And when we got onto the ward, this male nurse, is a real nice guy, Filipino I think he was. The ambulance guy said, okay, they took me to the bed, and the ambulance guy said, oh, he can walk to the bed. And the nurse looked at him and he said, no, he can't. And at that time I began to realize that, oh, something's a bit different here. And he said to me, right, well, when you're here now, you have to remain totally horizontal. You can't sit up. I said, I'm fine. He said, no, you're not. He says, anyhow, you become horizontal and you suffer another bleed, that would be the end. But whilst I was on the actual ward, I'm telling you, you don't realise how serious head injuries can be. Now, I was on a large ward and they had about 5 or 6 beds on one side and 5 or 6 beds on the other side. And there are about 3 large wards in that particular section. And I'm telling you, when you see people with huge scars running on their heads and tubes coming out of their skulls and things like this, or parts of their skull missing, you begin to realise that the environment you're in is not a joke, it's really serious. And that's when I began to really think, because a number of the patients, you can see that after they've had their operation, they were not the same. And when you're faced with death, it's not, how can I say, it's not a joke, it's not something which you can really take lightly or pretend or play a game with. So I looked at it very carefully and I had to resign myself. I felt, I prayed about it and I left my hands in God's hands to do with me as He willed. And the doctor was saying, well, if we found any weaknesses, then they've got 2 ways of operating. Either by going through a catheter, which would go from my groin, one of the main arteries, into my brain, and then they'll put some coils into the those particular balloon things, or those weaknesses. Now, if they found any of those particular aneurysms, they put the coil in there. I think it's like platinum coil or something that will then stay in your head, and that will prevent that weakness from bleeding. Now, that would be one option. The other option, if things were more serious, would be they'd have to do intrusive surgery, which is, in other words, cut my skull, go in and deal with the matter. On the Monday, I went for my angiogram early on the Monday morning, and through prayer again, I actually had the main specialist himself doing my actual angiogram, which is like a small little operation, you can say. And when he finished, I was perfectly fine. There was nothing that they could find. They realised I had a bleeding, yes, but they could find no weakness in my brain whatsoever. They could not see where this bleeding could have come from or anything, so I was perfectly fine. So then after this, I was given the all clear to be able to sit up in the ward, and within a day, I'm walking around, going about my business like anything else, and people look at me and thinking, what's he doing on this ward? Now, ordinarily, you tend to be in the hospital for maybe, a week and a half minimum, to maybe 2 weeks. I was there for 5 days only, and that's only because the actual occupational therapists were too busy to assess me the day before. Otherwise, I'd have been out within 3-4 days. Now that is almost unheard of. Very often people take quite a long time to recover. I came out of hospital, and within 3 weeks I was driving again, I was playing football. So the thing that we've got to understand, when God does his business, he doesn't do it in half measures. He doesn't play games, he'll do it properly. And to the extent now, which is what I was praying for, Lord, it is in your power to heal me, and if it's possible, heal me to the extent that the doctors will be surprised and be unaware of really what happened. And they themselves, because one of the doctors was saying to me, that is a miracle. They have no idea what happened, how it could have been, or anything of this nature. So do not think that because we're so filled with our lives, with business, with careers, with everything else, we then forget that God is really close to us and he wants to help us. And he's saying to us, listen, I'm right here. When God heals you, he doesn't play games. And people may say, well, aren't you afraid you might get another bleed on your brain, especially if they haven't found out what happened in the first place? No, because my God has told me that he has my life in his hands. You can't be in better care than that. Not at all.